Alright guys, welcome to Formula 1 news. Lewis Hamilton wins the British Grand Prix yesterday for Mercedes on pure pace, but they are not done just yet. Toto Wolff confirms with James Allison as well that there are more upgrades on the way for the next couple of rounds in a row. Mercedes are saying, look, we're in a good spot right now and we're going to bring more upgrades than anyone else can manage over the next few rounds. Not necessarily then Hamilton's last win of the season. Hungary, of course, historically a great track for him. And also Toto Wolff looking at Max Verstappen and saying, hey, we can prove that both of our drivers can win races this year. How about you come and join us for next season, given the trajectory of this car? Very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. First of all, if you guys might have seen over the weekends, the trailer for the new F1 movie starring Brad Pitt. This was pretty cool to note. The trailer is a teaser really, but it was actually pretty sick. And it turns out that they used some footage of actual Grand Prix. This is from Pierre Gasly's on board, and they've basically superimposed the Brad Pitt's car over the top of this. So this is what they're going to kind of do for the film. There was a few interesting things noted, of course, about this on the weekends, one of which you guys may have seen was actually this account, Expensify APX GP, which is basically like the Apex team. Turns out they actually had a Twitter account for months. People are only discovering this account like today, so I don't know if they thought that this was going to remain like under wraps and nobody was going to notice it existed, but there's a few interesting tweets the account has done. For example, back in November last year, it tweeted out, "Thank you, Nick, for an incredible season." So if you guys aren't familiar, this is the fictional F1 team that Brad Pitt and Damson Idris are driving for in this movie that's coming out next summer. And apparently part of their lore is that Nick DeVries was a driver for them and they dropped him. So, you know, Nick can't keep a seat anyway, can he? Gets dropped in the real sport and even dropped from a fake team. And if you go on their page, you'll see that they even tweeted this weekend, what a race, Sonny's P5, Joshua's P6. So, you know, I guess like little teasers or spoilers for the movie in some regard. I guess little Easter eggs really. But yeah, people are only really discovering this account today and going back over all of their stuff that they've put out over the last several months, even from last year. But actual news in the real F1 world, from Scuderia Ferrari, they had another disaster class this weekend, and I'm sure that Lewis Hamilton will at least be part of his mind today, will be on the relative trajectories between the team that he's currently with and the team that he's going to be with from next season and beyond. But Enrico Cardilli, we've talked about this guy for some time, one of their, you know, absolute top guys, technical director of the chassis of the car, he's gone. Now he's resigning to join, we think, Aston Martin. It's kind of unclear whether that is entirely unrelated, just because the last couple of rounds have obviously been embarrassing for Ferrari. Since Monaco, it's been awful. So some might wonder, is Cardile gone because they fired him effectively or pushed him out the door because of the way that their upgrades have gone? It doesn't really seem to be the case. I think this was in the works for some time, that Aston Martin came along and said, hey, we want to pay you more money, effectively. You can come and work for us. And that's what's happening. So actually, Fred Vasseur will oversee that area for the meantime until they find a replacement. And that's when, of course, there's been lots of talk, understandably, about Adrian Newey, right? Because if Ferrari are losing talent on the engineering side, they've got to replace it somewhere. And if Vasseur is taken over that role on an interim basis, that ain't lasting forever. So they've got to do something. There's also rumours, though, that wherever Newey goes next, he can't tell anyone until like September because of some clause in the Red Bull contract that means that he is mandated to silent until like the end of his time. Something like that anyway. At least like a 6-month window, I think, until the end of his time at Red Bull. Something like that. So basically means that we might not know where Newey's going to end up, but you gotta think one of the top Ferraris guys going to Aston. Firstly, Aston also want Newey, and they may get him, absolutely. But Ferrari, surely, given their recent trajectory, if they didn't already have Newey's signature, they've got to be begging this guy to come and work for them. And even Ted Kravitz mentioned on the notebook yesterday that Newey has still been in the paddock. Like, he's still there. He's not in all the meetings with Red Bull because he's going to be leaving the team. But he's still in the paddock. He's still walking up and down the grid before the Grand Prix with his notebook, taking, you know, notes of what the teams have been doing, what upgrades they've brought, walking around with his notepad and pen. Like, this guy ain't retiring. There's no way this guy is retiring if that's what he's still up to. The question is, where might he go? There were rumours today that he actually had a private visit to the McLaren headquarters. So, yeah, we've got McLaren, we've got Aston Martin, we've got Ferrari. We had the whole Williams talk, but I don't really see that going very far. But intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. But Ferrari do need some help, to be fair, on and off the track. They had such a good trajectory, Ferrari, over the last really 12 months or so. Ever since Vasseur came on board, it felt like the team was turning it around, but definitely a difficult stint here. Ferrari reckon that their recent upgrades that haven't worked have cost them roughly 3 months of development time, which is not great. And they're probably going to slip down the order in the Constructors' Championship based on what we are currently seeing. And even the stuff that happens off the track in terms of the communication with the drivers, what the team expected to happen in terms of the rain. I think this is why you see in tricky Grand Prix like yesterday, the best drivers and the best teams will tend to come to the fore, right? Like Verstappen didn't have the ultimate pace that, the drivers around him did, but a good strategic call and obviously good driving from Max got him into second. Hamilton, even with Mercedes not making the perfect calls in the sense that last stint, had he been on the mediums, that was the tyre to go on. They put him on the softs. He had to do a lot of management and really, whisper those tyres to the finish line to stay ahead of Max. We saw what happened to Lando on the same compounds, slightly further behind, who just fell into no man's land after Max got past him absolutely because the tyres were completely gone. Hamilton held on to them. But it's just those tricky conditions where you tend to find, the cream rises to the top or whatever. And right now, Ferrari just don't have all of that. And poor Leclerc was getting told all sorts of stuff on the radio, basically none of which actually turned out to be true. So this is what Hamilton may have to deal with at Ferrari, and also what Fred Vasseur has said, though, to be fair. He's been like, look, when Hamilton joins, he's also going to kick us into gear in the same way that hopefully we're going to, get the best out of Hamilton as well at the same time. And I'm sure there's still going to be discussions today. Has Hamilton made a mistake or not, leaving Mercedes? I still think the answer to that is probably no. Regardless of what happens from now to the end of the season, Mercedes didn't offer Hamilton the contract that he wanted to stay at the team for a longer term period. Clearly, they are looking at Max, obviously. They're looking at Antonelli. Russell's been driving very well this season, is in, on average, like he is the Mercedes form driver this year. So you look at the Mercedes situation, the promise of a future there. You look at the Ferrari situation, the fact that really 2026 is what a lot of people are looking for right now, and Mercedes seem to have, maybe an equal chance to Ferrari. And even if it doesn't work out for Hamilton at Ferrari, he's still got to drive for the red team before the end of his career, which was obviously a childhood dream for basically every single driver. But to be fair, next year, who knows? The Mercedes may well be a championship contender. This year, it looks like it kind of right now on the pace it had at Silverstone. But of course, it's way too far behind to challenge for the championship. And who knows what happens next year. With any luck, we're going to have, a Verstappen. Let's say he stays at Red Bull, but that may not be the case. We'll discuss in a second. Russell in the Mercedes, maybe Norris in the McLaren. And then, who knows how Piastri will do next year, because he's been getting better and better, it seems, over the last few rounds. Arguably could have won yesterday's Grand Prix had they actually double stacked like they should have done. And then, of course, Hamilton and Leclerc potentially in the Ferrari. So big storylines for next season. But Sergio Perez, will he even be on the grid next season? That is a matter for debate as of today, because there have been rumours circulating as to what exactly this contract clause may be. You might have seen this over the last couple of days, that apparently there's a contract clause, and it was reported by maybe not the best sources. Now, Autosport or Motorsport.com, basically the same thing, they are publishing this, which makes me believe that, this is probably true to some degree. So there is some sort of contract clause that says if Perez isn't within 100 points of Max during the summer break, which is, to be fair, you'd think that a second driver can be within 100 points of your top driver for the summer break, basically, just over halfway through the season after the Belgian Grand Prix. There's also maybe another clause where he can't be more than 5 positions behind Max. Don't know whether that's in the championship or whether that's over 3 consecutive races. But pretty much what everyone is saying is that Perez is not meeting the contract clause to be kept. And therefore, if they want to get rid of him, even though they've signed another 2-year extension, they are free to do exactly that. And this is the way the championship currently looks. Perez has scored, I think, 16 points or maybe 15 points in the last 6 races. So that ain't great. Right now, he's just been overtaken by Piastri, and let's be real, in the near future, he's probably going to get overtaken by Russell and Hamilton. So, that is, if Verstappen's first and Perez is 8th, it's just absolutely untenable to keep him in the team at that point, and that looks like the more likely than not outcome at the moment. And even Horner has quite dramatically changed his tune on the Perez angle and now says, we've got to be scoring points in that car. He full well knows that. And then says, his form is unsustainable, he's under pressure, right? And even, Christian Horner just straight up says it. He's under pressure, even though he signed the 2-year extension. So you'd think, no pressure on. But no, Christian Horner saying, there is pressure on, and that probably implies that there is some sort of clause where Perez's deal could come to an end. Now, I wonder what would happen, just in a hypothetical world, where Verstappen decides, actually, you know what? Mercedes does seem like the place to be. They're making good progress. Their prospects for 2026 probably seem like the best on the grid. Mercedes have never messed up an engine, changed to a new set of engine regulations. They're always there or thereabouts, if not the fastest. The team probably has less internal drama than Red Bull do, so there's a few good reasons why Max might consider leaving. Now, operationally, pit stop wise and strategy, Red Bull do clear. So I still don't think Max will leave, but it's more likely than it's ever been, to be honest, that given the current state of both teams, this is a possibility. And if Max was to leave, like, what do, right? Did they keep Perez? Do they bring Ricciardo and Perez on board for the Red Bull next year? Do they target, there were rumours that they were going to target, I think it was Albon and Piastri. There were rumours about that a couple of months ago now. If Red Bull were to lose Max, that those were the drivers they would target. But obviously they've got contracts, so what do you do? Bit complicated. The future is going to be very interesting there. And in terms of those drivers or constructors standings, Red Bull are still ahead by quite a comfortable margin just because Max is so good and consistent, and McLaren, threw away their chance this weekend, really. It's not miles away. It can be overturned. We're only halfway through the season. How far can Mercedes go, though, is a question. Also, how far may Ferrari fall with their current downward trend that they are currently on? But let's talk about Mercedes, right? Because Hamilton wins just a phenomenal Grand Prix yesterday in Silverstone. This Grand Prix track always delivers. And honestly, when Toto said this after Austria, when George Russell won the Grand Prix and Hamilton was thinking, damn, that could have been me, right? Had I been better in qualifying, just no damage first lap with Sainz, just better driving the race, then maybe Hamilton could have won that last week's Grand Prix. But to be fair, to win it, they relied on a crash up front. Like, they were 15 seconds or so off the leaders of Max and Lando, and had they not crashed into each other, Russell would not have won that Grand Prix. So when Toto after that race said, we will win a race with him this year, meaning Hamilton, then it was kind of a question to me as like, okay, is he just saying this because he's trying to convince Max that they actually are a real threat? Because Russell won the race. It's like, okay, great. But he didn't really win the race on pure pace, right? Like, he was lucky to get the chance to win it in many respects. So I was like, okay, Mercedes are still missing a couple of tenths. But the reality is on certain tracks, certainly tracks like Silverstone, where there is significant compromise in the way you have to set up your car and the cooler temperatures, which definitely seem to help this Mercedes. They were, Hamilton was the fastest man on track over the Grand Prix. On average, he was a tenth faster than anybody else, at least I think a tenth on Norris. Verstappen was actually a couple of tenths back in that first stint on average. Obviously Hamilton buzzing about the Grand Prix. We talked about it all in yesterday's video, but the question is, the next Grand Prix that we go to is the Hungarian Grand Prix, which is also a track where Hamilton seems to be a bit of a cheat code at, because he's now won the British Grand Prix 9 times, breaking the record tied with himself and Michael Schumacher for most Grand Prix wins at a single track. And now we go to Hungary, where he also holds the record tied at 8 in a row. Like, who's to say he got pole there last year? Who's to say that he can't potentially go on to win this one as well, given the way that Mercedes is currently looking? And it's probably not going to get any worse, because there's a general feeling in the paddock, and I think this is quite clear now, this is not a false dawn from Mercedes like we have seen before. For various reasons, they've now won 2 races on the bounce. Like, that is very impressive. And they've prevented Max from winning basically Max has won, if he's not won, he's won the next race every time for the last 2 years. And Mercedes are the team to come along and say, hey, Max is going to not win 2 races in a row. And who knows if they can keep that streak going forwards. But it's quite clear that they've unlocked something. James Allison is undoubtedly, it seems at this point, the engineer of the year, given what he's pulled off and his team has pulled off at Mercedes over the last couple of months. And they ain't done yet. James Allison, Toto Wolff are talking about, they've got more upgrades in the pipeline. Toto says this, there are more upgrades to come in terms of pure performance. We're bringing updates to Budapest and Spa. So the next 2 rounds, Hungary and then Belgium, they're bringing upgrades to both rounds. So, the other teams cannot keep match with Mercedes. And this is where they've had such a strength, Mercedes, in their dominant periods, was just always improving their car quicker, if not just as quick as anybody else. Certainly in the years they battled with Ferrari, 2017, 2018, 2019, stuff like this, to some degree, they were definitely out-developing Ferrari over the year. And the question was, have they lost too much engineering talent, Mercedes? Is there too much brain drain? Are they the same team they used to be? But to some extent, they seem to still have that within them, right? And ever since James Allison has returned, it seems to have been moving slowly but surely in the right direction. Now, Toto says, can't get carried away. Last week, we wouldn't have won without the tangling up front. So I definitely don't think Mercedes are like the fastest car now. I think it's going to depend on the conditions, and if things are favourable for the Mercedes, they can be there. But I definitely think they're probably going to be there or thereabouts on a lot of Grand Prix weekends to come. They've got a hyper-aggressive upgrade plan. The challenge that they're talking about is to keep updates arriving at a pace that others simply cannot keep up with. So I'm sure Red Bull have more in the works, but Red Bull brought what they said was a relatively significant upgrade here to Silverstone. Did it do much? I mean, Max, as we said, was actually about 0.3 slower in that first stint, or actually over the first 2 stints. So considering the average race pace between Lando and Hamilton over the first stint on the mediums, then the stint on the inters, both Norris and Hamilton were basically on exactly the same pace on average. Verstappen was like 3.5 off that, and they just didn't have the pure performance to actually handle, especially the Mercedes in the first stint. And then, of course, he was overtaken by both McLarens towards the end before they went on to the inters. So Verstappen will certainly be thinking about what Toto Wolff may have to say on the situation, and there are further comments to exactly this effect. So Hamilton won the Grand Prix on pure pace, right? And that is worthy of note. Yes, strategy played a part. Yes, McLaren bottling it played a part, and the other things that happened as well, you know, Russell DNFing and all this. Like, okay, to be fair, Hamilton probably beats him anyway because he overtook him on track and all that stuff. But Toto said the following on Hamilton's win, because Hamilton's gone, and okay, he's still there for now, but Hamilton is soon going to be the past for Mercedes. So Toto Wolff understandably is looking to the future and says, look, now we can prove to Max that he can win with us, because George's win, what would that have really told Max, right? Toto's going to be like, oh, look, Max, we won a race. Like, you should come and join us and drive for us alongside George next season. But Max is obviously going to be like, well, you wouldn't have won if not for, you know, the tangle that I had with Lando. So what are you talking about? But now that was like an actual pure victory on performance. So, you know, if Hamilton can win a race, if Russell can win a race in that Mercedes, absolutely Max can win a race in that Mercedes, and that's what might be kind of tempting, right? There was even this commented that Wolff wryly smiled as he pointed across the paddock in the direction of Red Bull's hospitality unit. I don't know. Max had lots of opportunity to look at the car in the race, and even apparently went on to say this. I don't know if this is a real quote or not, to be honest, but this account did Toto Wolff talk about Max today as tweeting about it, so I'm guessing it might be real. But anyway, it doesn't influence our thinking on how Mercedes are going to go going forwards. It just has confirmed my belief. If Lewis can win in our car, then Max can as well. I looked at Max's onboard. He was watching our car all race long, which I guess was true, certainly in the final stint. And this is interesting as a bit of an observation for some of the drivers. I know that Hamilton has talked about this before, that when he's followed, let's say Austin last year or something, the US Grand Prix, he'll be following the Red Bull, he'll be looking at it thinking, wow, you know, there's a lot of traction in that corner, like impressive stability under whatever. And I'm sure Max looks the same way. Like when he was chasing Hamilton down, I'm sure that he was watching, you know, the car to see how it goes, and he got a view of the rear of a Mercedes for the first time in a rather long time. And then Toto finishes it off with, he wants us. So like, I don't know if that's actually true. But what I will say is there is good reason for Toto to try it on. I mean, why not? You've got a few races to go until Max may end up making a decision here, and a few races ago when Toto was talking about this, it seemed like a real pipe dream to get Max in the car, but all of a sudden now it doesn't seem too unreasonable. I do wonder as well, look, Hamilton is going to go to Ferrari. I know people have been joking about, what if Red Bull, let's say Max goes to Mercedes or whatever, and Red Bull say, no, we've got a seat, Lewis. Like, do you want it? Like, is Ferrari not looking so good? You want to come to Red Bull instead? I mean, that would be a timeline for the ages. But more than likely, Max stays at Red Bull, and, you know, Antonelli or whatever comes into the Mercedes. But every single race where this happens, and especially if Mercedes become the fastest car in Hungary or Spa, as they potentially could if their upgrades work as they have done for the last few rounds, then what can be ruled out at this point? It's been a crazy season so far, and that is probably going to be continuing. So very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.